But moving forward, there has to be just a little bit more aggression. Now, there can be different moves. There can be maybe be other moves that can be made that are a little bit more shrewd as opposed to the grand slam swing. But we're saying, hey, make a little bit more than a guy over the age of 30. Here are the parameters. Not someone over 30, not someone with a history of injury, not somebody that you kind of are hoping is going to do something, somebody that you know is talented and can come in and contribute and be somebody that can, okay, all accounts, no questions asked. Christian, me, everybody will say this guy will contribute and be a piece. And that maybe has to be a little bit more aggressive in free agency and maybe move away from our process and just be a little bit more aggressive because the Lions could have been in that position where they were one guy away this year. But that, like I said, the injuries, once you lose Aiden Hutchinson, that just kind of changes the whole dynamic. We're
Yeah.
talking 21, 22 into 23. 23 was the big miss. That was one Super Bowl that was lost. 24 is an outlier, but moving forward, got to ask you then. We know the Eagles are the number one team in the NFC. Are the Lions number two, or do the Commanders? In my opinion, I think when Jaden Daniels, I still would take Jared Goff over Jaden Daniels in 2025, but quickly Daniels in
Yeah.
2026 is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So that window is closing real fast. Other teams are catching up. I do think the Bears are going to catch up. I do think that the Packers are going to continue to retool if they find their number one receiver. The Vikings, if they find their quarterback, if J.J. McCarthy is that guy, or if they bring back Sam Darnold and bring him more opportunities, there's an opportunity for them to get better. So the pathway to the NFC Championship game gets harder and harder every year. But right now, I do believe that the Lions are the number three team in the NFC. I think that number one is the Eagles, two is the Commanders. I think that they'll get better. I think that their defense is attacking. You like what they bring to the table. I like Dan Quinn and his defensive philosophy. I do think that they're going to continue to get better, but it's really close and close. Like if you say the Lions are number two, I respect everybody that says that, but I think that when you look at quarterbacks and you look at what Jaden Daniels can bring to the table with his mobility, that gives the Commanders a slight edge. And Cliff Kingsbury will develop them in another year. I like Brown. I like Terry McLaurin. I like what they're doing with their young defense. So there's opportunities, and they got Sanders Drill, a playmaker in crunch time. So it's not to poo-poo the Lions. I think it's neck and neck with the Commanders and the Lions. But the teams right behind, Packers, Vikings, 49ers, they're right there chomping at the bit. Are the Lions still, in your mind, right now, the number two team in the NFC?
No, I have them at number three as well, and just because where we stand right now, it's all merit based. And when the Commanders and the Lions played, the Commanders smacked them, and the Lions turned the ball over 5 times. So I think that revisiting this after free agency and the draft, I may have a different opinion just based on how the rosters will be more fully formed, and there's some decisions the Lions have to make in terms of internal free agents that we'll probably start to catch wind of here in the next little bit before free agency starts, but. I think right now they are number three. I think it's number three. The Commanders have the young core, and maybe they just got hot at the right time, and they did have a stretch in the middle of the year where they were struggling. But I think the pieces are in place for them to be really good for a long time, as long as Jaden Daniels doesn't regress in his second NFL season. And I think when you look at the Lions, they still have a ton of young talent, but that talent, I mean, they're not getting younger. And you're going to start to have to endure some questions about the offensive line this offseason, which we've wrote about a couple times already this offseason with Graham Glasgow and what they might be able to offer for Kevin Zeitler if he wants to come back on a new contract. So, yeah, I mean, there are some little holes starting to pop up here, and I still think the Lions roster as constructed is really solid. And we've talked about how it may not be enough to win the Super Bowl, but they're still going to be really good because a lot of the reasons they were really good are going to be back in Lions uniforms next year. And you're going to get Hutchinson back, and you're going to get Aleem McNeil back. And so, yeah, I think the Lions right now are number three. It goes Eagles, Commanders, Lions. And I think that gap isn't very big. I think the Eagles opened up a little bit of a lead on the Commanders and everybody else because they are the reigning Super Bowl champions, and they got a ton of pieces that will be back. But I think the Lions still have what it takes to compete in the NFC. They just need to make a couple moves so that they can get over that hump and pass the Eagles and beat them when it matters most in the conference championship game. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot at stake moving forward for the Lions when you talk about proverbial windows closing and opening. But I do think that they've got the pieces in place to still be really good. But how they attack this offseason will determine whether or not they're able to cut the cake, so to say.